This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. I think it might be fair to say that I spend quite a lot of time sort of thinking about ideas around this kind of gear, and I have this gig coming up with Jake, which I'm playing tomorrow with him, and Jake is going to be using a deluxe reverb live, so I thought I need to be using a live amp with this as well. I don't know if any of you guys have found this, but like if you go to a gig with a modeler and the other guy's using a real amp, I find that really difficult to enjoy that as a situation. I think it's best in that case to either both be kind of using a modeler or both be using real amps, and I'm not going to be able to convince Jake to use a modeler. And so, yeah, I'm going to be using my Rift amp. It's in the car now. And typically, I think this is what even started me thinking down this road of putting together a hybrid rig. Kind of, I think the natural thing to do if you're using a real amp is to think, right, well then, the modelling side of stuff has got to take a back seat. I need to put on a couple of real drive pedals, and you start to build a board around it. Now I built this board, and then I decided, right, for this gig I'm going to at least need a phaser, probably need a flanger. It turns out that probably what I really need is a trem. Now I don't have a real version of either of those. I've only got modelling versions or kind of digital, so I decided to put an Eventide H90 in the place to do phaser and flanger. The HX Stomp on that board is to do 2 delays, a reverb, and to go to front of house with like a Dumble style amplifier straight to front of house, so that I don't have to use a mic on stage. And then the rest of the board is drives and a compressor, right? And it's not the most crazy board ever built, and it's still way over £2,100. I did it like some quick calculations here to show that, and crucially it's kind of difficult to back up properly. So I've got a backup power supply that I'm going to be taking, which I didn't even factor into the cost there, and I didn't factor in cables, which is another thing that I need to really stick in. The thing is that I'm very happy that the idea of modelling works really well for me, and the convenience of having things at foot switches. And I'm also very comfortable with the idea that when I'm gigging, using a real amp is super satisfying. What I've not typically done much of is just use the actual device as it is, you know, like a modelling device, as the heart of the rig, which is controlling kind of things in that way. Now, in the past I would have done full cable method stuff. Actually, the amps that I have now don't have effects loops in general. So the approach is going to be, you take your FM9 in this case, and I'm going to put basically drives, then modulation, delay, and then at the end of the chain I can split off, because this has loads of outputs, and I can have an output go to the amp, and then front of house can get something with an amp and cab on. And in this case, I think I use a Fender Twin for that. And then front of house gets the Fender Twin, and on stage I'll have my Rift Matchless Lightning clone. So I tried it briefly yesterday, and I just switched between my pedal board and the FM9 as we were setting up. But I just said to Jake, like, does this sound worse to you or anything? And he was like, absolutely not. And so that kind of gave me the confidence, because Jake definitely is a bit of a tube purist, loves his pedals, and that sort of stuff. But it sounded really, really good. I was using the Zen Drive. I guess you'll see it in a second. The Zen Drive and the Sir Riot in here for the drives. I've done enough comparisons of Fractal stuff to know that I'm very confident that Fractal know what they're doing in terms of modelling. And I guess the real benefit here that I don't have with my board is that I'm just going through one ADA conversion. With the board, I'll be going through 3 analog pedals, and then into the Eventide H90, which is an ADA conversion, right? Same for the HX Stomp. So both of those are going to do something to the signal if you're kind of a purist about this stuff. So, and it's kind of the same thing, I guess, if you've got a bunch of kind of digital type pedals, whether that's Strymon or whatever, that there are going to be some amounts of ADA. I think Strymon, some of them have a drive-through as well, quite a lot of them. But that doesn't stop there being sometimes some kind of phasing issues when you do introduce things back into signal chains and stuff like that. So is this actually more what we should be thinking about? Not a situation where it's either or, but a situation where actually the pedal board can go out the window. We can keep the real amp, we can keep the digital modeling device, I use it like a multi-effects for the stuff that it does really well. Like Fractal effects are amazing. Steve Vai, John Petrucci, lots of folks agree. Stick also that into the top tier amp modeling that's going to go to the front of house. Don't know why I'm doing that, apologies. And then also output 3 goes to my real amp on stage, which I'm confident, because of the quality of the drives and effects in here, is going to sound just as good as my pedal board basically did anyway. It was my experience switching between them. Have any of you guys tried this? Probably there are a bunch of you already doing this. And the other benefit is I don't have to do the tap dancing thing, which I would have to introduce something like the Gig Rig Quartermaster or some sort of switching rig to get to this level of what is possible on stage. Like, for instance, I can have a flanger underneath one of the other foot switches. You could do this, of course, with a full Helix as well, or something like that, or any other device to some extent. I think the Quad Cortex is a little bit more limited in terms of what the foot switching can do at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. Probably something I should have been thinking about before, because like the Fractal Axe 8, people have been using it like this for a while. I think Tom Quayle was doing it. It's just something that I got away from for a while for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, here's more of a run through. Okay, so here's the run through on the floor. I've got my clean tone. Okay, and I can kick on a blues OD. Okay, I can kick on a delay. And the other cool thing is, like, all the assignments are already there for the other sort of stuff. So if I go to my drive, if I find out on the day that it's a no amp kind of gig, nothing really changes too drastically, like my whole workflow. So that's kind of the setup, I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have you tried something like this? Would this work for you? You know, I decide, oh, I can take an amp to this gig. Good, good. Simple stuff, really, with a complex rig, sort of, but it ends up with a more simple solution than trying to noodle my head around other kind of things in some ways. What if it's not even about tube amps versus modelers, but it's about the friends we made along the way? I wanted to build a preset here, which I think is actually getting the best of both worlds. We're very used to, a lot of us, I think, either using a tube amp or a digital modeler. This hybrid idea, I think, is probably for me where things are at, because sometimes, you know, you're just going to end up in a situation where you do need to be quiet, basically. I wanted to build a preset here today with my FM9 and the Fender Pro Reverb. I think it's going to sound quite good. Now, this is the basic layout that I've got from my live preset, but I wanted to think, well, how would I make this work? In a situation where I want it to work direct as well, but as well as being, you know, able to work in front of an amplifier. So I think I'm going to get rid of this off of the bat. We don't need that. Just delete that. The amp and the cab is going to need to be at the end of the chain, really. And I'm not going to be using it in the way where the amp is going to be channel switching, because I'm going into a Fender amp over there. I guess another way you could do this sort of thing might be with 4-cable method, if you had an amp that could cope with that kind of thing. But right, so let me just move these over here for now. So now as I kick through the scene, cool, so now I've got a drive going on there. So what I want to do now is set up so I'm going to put the enhance right here. And the flanger and phaser should ideally be after our drive sections. So I've got 2 blocks here now which I can put in drive. So my main type of drive normally would be like a governor type drive, so Marshall Governor. Sir Riot is based on that, I believe, so this might be a good option. So this would be on for rhythm. So that's my kind of rhythm tone. Then my lead tone I think, would involve kind of boosting things a bit further with something like the Zen drive. Let's take the voice drive down, voice and tone up. My clean should have no drives on it, and it shouldn't have the delay either. My clean wet. Doing that kind of thing. Kind of has even more, and then the rhythm with the delay. Now the cool thing with this is I've got my kind of foot switching down here, which is not really as possible with a normal pedal board. Long press chorus, get a flanger. I'm going to kind of give this a play and see if it's doing what I like.